Listen, they hid our history on purpose, but we're bringing the truth back, loud and clear.
How Ebony and Jet quietly built the blueprint for Black excellence and cultural power. Most people today scroll past Black history as if it is a side note. They know the names of a few heroes, a few marches, maybe a speech or two. But what they do not realize is that long before social media, long before representation became a buzzword, Black people built their own media empires that shaped how we see ourselves. And two of the most powerful weapons in that fight were Ebony and Jet. Welcome back to My Blackness 100, the home of unapologetic Black truth, real history, and the unfiltered greatness of our people. If you are serious about understanding how our image has been controlled, distorted, and then reclaimed by us, you are in the right place. Before we go deep into how Ebony and Jet quietly built the blueprint for Black excellence and Black empowerment, take a second. Like this video, subscribe to My Blackness 100, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the stories they never wanted us to connect. Because here is the uncomfortable truth. If you only watch what mainstream media gives you, you will think Black greatness is rare, accidental, or limited to a few celebrities. But Ebony and Jet proved the exact opposite. They were not just magazines, they were a mirror, a megaphone, and a battlefield. In this video, we are going to break down 10 specific ways these publications pushed Black excellence into the center of the conversation and empowered generations of Black people to see themselves as powerful, intelligent, beautiful, and global. And as we go through each one, I want you to ask yourself, who controls our image today, and are we still holding the line? Let us start with the first and maybe most foundational role. They documented Black brilliance long before mainstream media cared. At a time when newspapers were happy to report Black crime, but not Black genius, Ebony and Jet were profiling doctors, scientists, educators, and entrepreneurs. People like Dr. Charles Drew, who revolutionized blood plasma storage, and Mary McLeod Bethune, who built schools and advised U.S. presidents. These magazines said to the world, our people are not side characters in someone else's story. They created a visual and written archive of Black intelligence and leadership that proved we were always capable, always innovating, always building. Next, they normalized Black beauty and elegance. You have to understand how radical that was. Before Jet's Beauty of the Week and Ebony's fashion spreads, most media told Black women their features were a problem. Straight hair, light skin, narrow features were sold as the standard. Ebony and Jet flipped that. They put dark skin, natural textures, full lips, and Afrocentric fashion on glossy covers and center spreads. When Cicely Tyson appeared with a short natural hairstyle, or when Diane Carroll was photographed in high fashion, it was more than a pretty picture. It whispered to every Black girl looking at that page, you are not a mistake, you are the standard. Third, they showcased Black wealth, success, and ownership. Not just the entertainer who made it, but the owner, the executive, the strategist. Ebony ran stories on people like Berry Gordy building Motown, and later business titans like Reginald Lewis. They showed Black millionaires, Black-owned companies, Black professionals in suits making decisions. That matters because when all you see are images of struggle, your vision of the future shrinks. Ebony and Jet opened that vision back up. They did not just tell you to chase the bag, they quietly showed you what Black economic power looks like in real life. Fourth, they humanized Black celebrities, politicians, and everyday heroes. Mainstream outlets often flattened Black figures into one-dimensional roles: the entertainer, the angry activist, the athlete. Ebony and Jet went deeper. They interviewed icons like Muhammad Ali about faith, fear, and strategy, not just about fights. They showed Aretha Franklin as a musician, a businesswoman, and a daughter, and they did the same for unknown heroes: teachers, pastors, nurses, organizers. By doing that, they sent a clear message: you don't need to be famous to matter, and even the famous are human beings with depth, doubts, and purpose. Fifth, they brought the civil rights movement into the living room. Jet's publication of the open casket photo of Emmett Till is one of the most important media decisions in American history. That image forced people to confront the violence that Black folks had been describing for decades. Ebony and Jet did not sanitize the struggle. They covered marches, sit-ins, police brutality, and leadership debates within the movement. They treated our pain and our resistance as real news, not as an afterthought. For many families, those magazines were their main source of uncensored information about what was happening to Black people across the country. Sixth, they shifted the lens of representation. Instead of centering whiteness and allowing Black people to appear only as contrast or background, Ebony and Jet put Black life at the center. Whole issues were dedicated to Black families, Black travel, Black health, Black home interiors, Black fitness. You saw Black parents raising children, Black couples buying homes, Black students graduating from college. That might sound simple today, but back then it was revolutionary. It told readers, we are not defined by oppression alone. We have full lives, full stories, and full humanity. Seventh, they created a shared cultural memory. Before social media could capture every moment, Ebony and Jet were out there documenting our weddings, HBCU homecomings, church conventions, beauty pageants, and festivals. They preserved our joy. Think about that. Future historians will look back and see not only protest and pain, but also celebration and tradition, because those magazines preserved it. When your grandmother kept a stack of ebony in the living room, she was not just holding on to old magazines, she was preserving family, culture, and history in a form you could touch. Eighth, they provided practical roadmaps for success. These magazines were not just about inspiration, they were about information. They ran features on how to manage money, apply for scholarships, navigate corporate spaces, and start businesses. Ebony's coverage of HBCUs helped generations of Black students choose where to study and what to pursue. Articles on home ownership and credit gave families tools to build real generational wealth. In other words, they did not just say you can make it, they showed you how. Ninth, they amplified African and diaspora connections. While mainstream media routinely painted Africa as a continent of chaos and poverty, Ebony and Jet showed African presidents, artists, and revolutionaries in suits, palaces, and parliaments. They covered leaders like Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana and Nelson Mandela in South Africa, linking Black struggles across the ocean. They made it clear that we are part of a global Black story. That Pan-African awareness planted seeds that you now see in everything from Afrobeats to Pan-African fashion to movements that call for Black people worldwide to build with each other, not against each other. Finally, they served as a counter-media institution. This might be the most important point. Ebony and Jet did not wait for mainstream validation. They didn't ask for permission to tell Black stories. They built their own offices, hired their own photographers and writers, and answered to their own community. That independence meant they could prioritize our truth over someone else's comfort. every modern Black media space, from digital platforms to independent filmmakers, is walking a path that Ebony and Jet helped clear. They proved you don't change your image by begging for better coverage. You change it by owning the platform. So when we talk about Black excellence and Black empowerment, we are not talking about a social media trend. We are talking about a long legacy of intentional image making, storytelling, and narrative control. Ebony and Jet were not perfect, but they were powerful. They gave us receipts of our greatness in a world determined to deny it. And if you are watching this right now, you are part of the generation that decides whether that legacy continues or fades. If this breakdown opened your eyes, do something with it. Like this video, subscribe to My Blackness 100, and turn on all notifications so you never miss the real history behind our power. Share this with someone who grew up seeing these magazines on the coffee table and someone younger who has never heard of them at all. Drop a comment and tell me, did your family have Ebony or Jet in the house, and what do you remember seeing in those pages? This is My Blackness 100, where we reconnect with the stories that prove our greatness is not a surprise, it's a pattern. Until next time, protect your mind, protect your image, and never let anyone else define your blackness for you.
The first Hebrews? They weren't European, they were African. Ancient records describe Israelites mixing with Egyptians and Cushites, dark-skinned African nations. Old maps even show Kingdom of Judah written in West Africa. And tribes across Ghana and Nigeria still claim Hebrew roots today. So why do Sunday school paintings show Hebrews looking like Europeans? Because if the world knew the chosen people looked African, the entire religious image would flip upside down.
I always, at first, I wanted to be white, because my family was 20 of us, 6 girls and 14 boys. We would make 50 and 60 bales of cotton, gather all that cotton, and we wouldn't have food in the wintertime. So I figured then the white people must be right. But as I got older, I said, no, it's something wrong. And if I ever get a chance, I'm going to do something about it. I'm thinking about in terms of a better and a greater world for all people. And we can't do that by me in one corner doing what I can do to hurt you and you in the other corner doing the same thing against me.
Black history isn't just about slavery or the civil rights movement. There are hidden stories that will blow your mind. Did you know? Katherine Johnson's math sent astronauts to the moon. Without her, space travel as we know exists. The banjo? It came from Africa. And in Brazil, enslaved Africans created capoeira, a martial art disguised as dance to resist oppression. Queen Zinga of Angola fought European colonizers for 40 years using both war and diplomacy, a strategist history almost erased. During Jim Crow in America, the Green Book guided black travelers to safe hotels, restaurants, and gas stations. Mansa Musa of Mali was the richest man in history. His wealth was so legendary that his pilgrimage to Mecca changed the global economy. For over 700 years, African Moors ruled parts of Spain, bringing advances in medicine, mathematics, and architecture that shaped Europe's Renaissance. Appreciate this post by clicking on the subscribe button. Part 3 is coming soon. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.
When we say no one is illegal on stolen land, we are not speaking emotionally. I'm speaking legally and historically. Europeans did not arrive here as citizens. They did not arrive with permission. They arrived as foreigners crossing oceans into sovereign indigenous territories. By every standard they would later invent, they came illegally. Indigenous nations governed these lands through recognized legal systems, not based on paper, but on councils, treaties, kinship law, land stewardship, and intertribal diplomacy. Law does not require ink to exist. Writing is a technology, not a measure of civilization. Europeans knew this, yet deliberately dismissed indigenous law because it stood in the way of land theft. The very Europeans who claimed native peoples had no law came from societies that did not recognize birthright citizenship. In Europe, citizenship historically followed jus sanguinis, blood, ancestry, lineage. You belonged where your people belonged. A German born in France was not French. An Englishman born abroad was still English. Soil did not define belonging, blood did. But when Europeans seized indigenous land, that system no longer benefited them.
Yeah.
So they changed the rules. In the Americas, colonial governments and later the United States strategically adopted jus soli, citizenship by soil,
Right.
and not because it was morally superior, but because it converted occupation into legitimacy. It transformed the invaders' children into natives of stolen land, erasing the fact that indigenous nations still existed. Through laws like the Homestead Act, the U.S. government gave away millions of acres of indigenous land to white European males. And here is the part that destroys modern anti-immigrant arguments. You did not have to be a U.S. citizen to receive native land. The law explicitly allowed land grants to people who merely declared an intent to become citizens. That means vast amounts of indigenous land were handed to non-citizens, foreigners by definition, while indigenous peoples were being confined, removed, or killed. Our birthright citizenship was embraced only when it benefited white European settlers. Land grants were given to foreigners on indigenous soil. Borders were drawn after conquest, not before.
Right.
Now the same system that legalized invasion pretends to care about legality.
Right now, you get jobs in America right now through kinship, friendship, and politics. That's what gets you a job in the United States of America today. Not merit. Merit has nothing to do with it. Anytime a white man with a prison record can get a job that a black man without a prison record cannot get, and they have the same qualifications. Isn't that clear? I mean, what kind of picture I have to paint?
The Black excellence debate that still shapes Black empowerment today. What if the most important struggle in Black history was not fought on plantations or battlefields, but in classrooms, newspapers, and the minds of Black thinkers? What if the real question was never whether Black people deserved freedom, but how Black liberation should be achieved? This is the historic intellectual clash between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, two giants of Black thought whose debate shaped Black empowerment in America, defined the future of Black education, economic self-reliance, and civil rights, and sent intellectual shockwaves far beyond the United States. One argued that Black progress would come through economic independence, vocational training, and strategic patience. The other insisted that education, political agitation, and immediate equality were non-negotiable. Both fought for Black dignity, both envisioned freedom, but their disagreement split a generation and ultimately helped birth Pan-Africanism, influence Kwame Nkrumah, and shape the philosophy behind African unity and decolonization. In this video, we trace how this debate moved from America to Africa, how Du Bois's ideas found a home in Ghana, and how Nkrumah transformed Black intellectual resistance into a continental liberation movement. If you care about Black excellence, Black history, Pan-African thought, and the future of Africa, you're in the right place. This is My Blackness 100. Like the video, share it with your community, drop your thoughts in the comments, and hit the notification bell so you never miss content that strengthens Black consciousness and collective power. Their names were Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, and this was not just an American debate. Their ideas crossed the Atlantic. They reshaped African consciousness. They influenced Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president. They helped ignite Pan-Africanism as a global movement. Stay with us until the end, because this story concludes in Accra, Ghana, where W.E.B. Du Bois chose to spend his last days not in exile, but in triumph on African soil. Welcome to My Blackness 100, where Black excellence is intentional, Black empowerment is strategic, and our global story is told without apology. Two paths toward Black power. To understand Black empowerment, we must confront an uncomfortable truth. Black people have never lacked vision. What we have debated fiercely is strategy. In the shadow of slavery's collapse, Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois came of age in the same brutal reality. Lynching was routine, segregation was law, Black life was cheap, fragile, and constantly under threat.
They witnessed the same violence, the same humiliation, the same stolen possibilities, but they drew very different conclusions about how Black people should survive, rise, and win. This was not a disagreement about freedom. It was a disagreement about timing, tactics, and power. Booker T. Washington, Power Through Economic Mastery. Booker T. Washington believed Black liberation would be built quietly, patiently, and from the ground up. His philosophy was simple but calculated. Before demanding equality, Black people must become economically indispensable. He urged Black communities to master trades and vocational skills, build farms, workshops, and businesses, create tangible economic value, avoid provoking violent retaliation from white power structures. Washington believed that wealth could do what protest could not, force respect. In his famous Atlanta Compromise speech, he argued that Black people should temporarily accept segregation, focus on economic strength, and postpone direct political confrontation. In his view, power earned through productivity would eventually make injustice unsustainable. This approach won him powerful white allies and funding, enabling the rise of Tuskegee Institute, where thousands of Black men and women were trained in practical skills. To Washington, dignity was not loud, it was disciplined. It was built through labor, self-sufficiency, and quiet accumulation of power. But not everyone agreed that waiting was wisdom, and not everyone believed freedom could be postponed without cost. This disagreement would ignite one of the most consequential debates in Black history. W.E.B. Du Bois, Power Through Knowledge and Resistance. W.E.B. Du Bois rejected compromise without hesitation. To him, the idea of waiting for justice was not strategic, it was dangerous. Du Bois understood a hard reality. Justice delayed is justice denied, and delay always favors the oppressor. He argued that political rights are not negotiable. Segregation is not temporary policy, it is moral theft. Black people deserve full intellectual development, not lowered expectations. Leadership must be forged by an educated, politically conscious Black vanguard. He called this leadership class the Talented 10th, not as an elite detached from the masses, but as a shield and spear for collective Black advancement. Where Booker T. Washington preached patience, Du Bois demanded urgency. Where Washington focused on survival, Du Bois focused on liberation. Where Washington avoided confrontation, Du Bois named power, challenged it, and exposed its lies. This ideological collision did more than shape early civil rights thinking. It set the blueprint for every Black freedom debate that followed, and its echoes are still with us today. Black excellence is not a motivational quote. Here is where many modern conversations collapse. This debate was never about right versus wrong. It was about strategy under oppression. Washington laid economic foundations. Du Bois built political and intellectual firepower. History delivers a sobering lesson. Oppression doesn't disappear when you succeed. It adapts. Wealth without rights can be confiscated. Skills without power can be exploited. Success without protection can be erased. Du Bois grasped what many still overlook. Without political agency, Black excellence remains exposed. Achievement alone does not secure freedom. Power does. And this realization pushed his thinking beyond America. Du Bois and the global Black struggle. Du Bois recognized early that Black oppression was not local, it was global. Jim Crow in America, colonial rule in Africa, plantation economies in the Caribbean. Different locations, same system, same logic of extraction, control, and silence. This insight transformed Du Bois into one of the chief architects of Pan-Africanism, the belief that people of African descent share a linked destiny and must unite politically, economically, and culturally to break global systems of domination. Beginning in 1900, Du Bois helped organize Pan-African congresses, bringing together African and diaspora leaders to confront colonial rule and racial exploitation, African self-determination, and global Black unity and political coordination. Du Bois warned that Africa could never be free while fragmented by colonial borders and governed by foreign interests. Among those listening carefully was a young African student studying abroad, absorbing these ideas with quiet intensity. His name was Kwame Nkrumah. Du Bois and Nkrumah, when ideas became power. Kwame Nkrumah did not simply study W.E.B. Du Bois, he internalized him. Through Du Bois's writings, Nkrumah grasped a radical truth. Freedom delayed is freedom denied, whether in Alabama or on the African continent. He learned that political independence must be immediate, not negotiated into eternity. Colonialism doesn't reform itself, it must be confronted. Africa's future depends on unity, not inherited division. So when Ghana broke free in 1957, Nkrumah made a declaration that shook the world. The independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked to the total liberation of Africa. That single sentence distilled Pan-Africanism to its essence. Nkrumah's relentless push for African unity, a continental political vision, economic self-reliance, and resistance to neo-colonial control was Du Bois's intellectual framework translated into state policy. What had once lived in essays and conferences now lived in a nation. Du Bois' final choice, coming home. In 1961, W.E.B. Du Bois made a decision that unsettled America and electrified Africa. He did not leave the United States for a tour. He did not go as a diplomat. He left for good. At the invitation of Kwame Nkrumah, Du Bois relocated permanently to Accra, Ghana, to lead work on the Encyclopedia Africana, a project meant to reclaim African history from centuries of colonial distortion. But this move was not merely academic, it was a statement. After a lifetime of being watched, questioned, and constrained in America, Du Bois chose Africa as his final ground of belonging. In Ghana, he found honor instead of suspicion, belonging instead of marginalization, and purpose instead of endless protest. By settling in Accra, Du Bois transformed Pan-Africanism from an idea into a lived reality. When he died in 1963, he was buried on African soil. On the very day his death was announced, Martin Luther King Jr. addressed the March on Washington. 2 continents, 1 struggle, 1 unbroken legacy. The blueprint for Black empowerment today. This debate did not end with Du Bois and Washington. It lives inside today's hardest questions: economic empowerment or political resistance, entrepreneurship or protest, representation or ownership, individual success or collective liberation. The answer is not choosing sides. The answer is integration. True Black excellence must be economically powerful, politically conscious, intellectually grounded, culturally confident, and globally connected. Du Bois teaches us to demand justice. Washington teaches us to sustain progress. Together, they offer a complete strategy for liberation. If this video expanded your understanding of Black excellence, Black empowerment, and Pan-African history, take action right now. Like this video so Black knowledge reaches more people. Subscribe to My Blackness 100 for uncompromising Black history and empowerment content. And comment below whose philosophy speaks more to this generation, Du Bois or Washington? Share this with someone who believes Black history is small, because our story is global, our excellence is deliberate, and our liberation is still unfolding. This is My Blackness 100.
Frantz Fanon wrote a book so dangerous that France banned it the same day it published. While dying of leukemia in 1961, this black psychiatrist created something that turned college students into revolutionaries, got smuggled across borders and hollowed out Bibles, and made the CIA put him on a watch list. He raced against death to finish one final message to the colonized world. Your chains are in your mind. Violence will set you free, and your oppressors are more terrified of you than you've ever been of them. 3 months later, he was dead. His book is still igniting revolutions. What made one man's ideas worth killing? Fanon told colonized people worldwide that their mental enslavement mattered more than their physical chains, and that force against oppressors wasn't just justified, it was psychologically necessary for liberation. Steve Biko built South Africa's Black consciousness movement on his theories. Palestinian fighters and liberation movements from Bolivia to Ghana still quote his manifesto like scripture. They couldn't kill his ideas. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why empires still fear a dead man's words. But to understand why those words detonated across the world, you need to see where the explosion started. July 1925, Fort-de-France, Martinique. Frantz Fanon was born into a middle-class black family on a Caribbean island that looked like paradise, but functioned as a psychological prison. His parents scraped together money to send him to Lycée Victor Schellcher, the island's elite school. But what happened in those classrooms was calculated violence. Every morning, black children stood and recited "Our ancestors, the Gauls," memorizing French kings and European battles, while their actual ancestors lay in unmarked graves on sugar plantations. When young Fanon spoke Creole French, teachers scolded him for not using proper French. Speak Creole? Primitive. Mention African history? Ignorant. Only French mattered. French language, French heroes, French culture. One teacher refused to participate in this erasure. Aimé Césaire had just created the Negritude movement, teaching that black identity was power, not shame. He planted seeds in Fanon's mind about pride and resistance, but seeds need fire to grow. 1940. Vichy fascists seized control of Martinique after France fell to Hitler. Suddenly, French racism wasn't polite anymore. It became official policy. Fanon, 15 years old, watched the mask slip off. The civilized colonizers revealed themselves as brutal oppressors who had always been there, just hidden behind promises of equality. Fanon was 15 when he watched French civilization reveal its true face. 2 years later, he volunteered to die for it. At 17, Frantz Fanon joined the Free French Army in 1943, believing he was fighting for liberty and human dignity. He fought in the forests of Alsace, took shrapnel near Montbéliard, earned the Croix de Guerre for courage under fire. French officers pinned medals on his chest, then barred him from their mess halls because of his skin color. When Germany finally surrendered, Charles de Gaulle ordered every black soldier removed from formations entering German territory. France's victory parade couldn't have black faces visible in the photographs. The men who bled for France had to watch from the sidelines as white soldiers took credit for their sacrifice. Fanon wrote his brother Joby from Europe, "I've been deceived, and I am paying for my mistakes. I'm sick of it all." That letter marked the death of one Frantz Fanon and the birth of another, a man who would spend his life diagnosing and destroying the psychological machinery of white supremacy. Before we continue with how Fanon transformed his rage into the most feared revolutionary text of the 20th century, if you believe these stories of black intellectuals who terrified empires need to be heard, subscribe to Black Stories Untold. We're exposing the thinkers they tried to silence and the truths they spent millions covering up. Now, back to the video. 1947. Fanon entered medical school at the University of Lyon to study psychiatry. In Lyon's hospitals, he treated North African immigrant workers, Algerian men suffering psychological breakdowns that French doctors diagnosed as proof of racial inferiority. Colonial psychiatrist Antoine Perrault published papers claiming Algerians had underdeveloped frontal lobes and were mentally primitive, medical degrees used to justify oppression. Fanon recognized what others refused to see. These men suffered from the trauma of racism itself. Society was sick, but doctors blamed the victims. He wrote his doctoral thesis laying out exactly how colonialism manufactured mental illness, how white supremacy functioned as psychological warfare. His committee rejected it as too radical. So in 1952, Fanon published Black Skin, White Masks himself. The book exposed colonialism's deepest weapon, forcing black people to see themselves through white eyes, split between two identities, never fully either one. Fanon watched it happen every day in his clinic. Black men staring in mirrors and seeing monsters. Algerian women scrubbing their skin raw, trying to lighten it. Patients who'd abandoned their birth names, their mother tongues, their entire identities, all for a chance at being treated human. But Fanon went further. He argued that liberation required recognizing this psychological split and refusing to perform for white approval anymore. Political revolution had to begin with mental decolonization, reclaiming the right to define yourself on your own terms. In Caribbean villages, people passed copies hidden in Bible covers. In African townships, students gathered in secret to read passages aloud. Why? Because Fanon said what no one else dared. The hate you feel when you look in the mirror, that's not yours. It was planted there. You're not sick. The system is sick, and you don't need anyone's permission to be free. That book exposed colonialism's playbook. But Fanon wasn't satisfied just writing about the disease. In 1953, he walked straight into its heart. November 1953, Frantz Fanon arrived in Algeria as head psychiatrist at Blida Joinville Psychiatric Hospital. The moment he stepped off the boat, he entered a nightmare. French colonists lived in stone houses with electricity and running water. Algerians lived in what Fanon described as a town on its knees, wallowing in mire. No lights, no infrastructure, systematic starvation. At Blida Joinville, Fanon revolutionized psychiatric treatment. He created cafe meetings where Algerian patients discussed their lives in Arabic instead of French. He established workshops for basket weaving and pottery, organized Muslim and Christian religious celebrations, started a patient-run newspaper. He was reconnecting people to their culture instead of forcing them to assimilate into French normalcy. But his patient roster revealed the true horror. French soldiers who brutalized Algerians during interrogations came to him with nightmares and psychological breakdowns. Algerian victims arrived unable to speak, unable to stop screaming. One French policeman sought treatment because torture had made him violent at home. He was battering his wife and children. The man didn't want to stop brutalizing Algerians. He wanted relief from the psychological costs so he could continue with a clear conscience. Fanon stared at an impossible truth. You cannot heal individuals in a society built on violence. November 1954, the FLN, or the National Liberation Front, launched coordinated attacks across Algeria, declaring war on French colonial rule. Frantz Fanon immediately chose a side. His hospital became a secret sanctuary. He treated wounded FLN fighters, hid weapons, provided medical cover for revolutionaries. By 1956, this impossible double life was destroying him. He was a French government employee, helping France massacre the people he was secretly protecting. On November 1956, he wrote his resignation letter. There comes a time when silence becomes dishonesty. France expelled him in January 1957, giving him 48 hours to leave Algeria. Fanon went underground instead. He surfaced in Tunis, joined the FLN openly as editor of their newspaper, El Mujahid, and became the intellectual voice of Algerian liberation. France thought expelling him would end the threat. Instead, within months, Fanon had become Africa's most dangerous diplomat. As FLN ambassador to Ghana, Frantz Fanon traveled across Africa, meeting revolutionary leaders, Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, Patrice Lumumba in Congo, Felix Mumi in Cameroon. At the 1958 All-African People's Congress in Accra, he advocated passionately for the African Legion, a continent-wide armed force that could coordinate liberation struggles from Algeria to South Africa. European powers understood the threat. One unified Africa, sharing weapons, tactics, and revolutionary consciousness could dismantle the entire colonial project. Fanon was the architect connecting these movements. French intelligence sent assassins. Near the Algeria-Tunisia border, a landmine detonated under Fanon's car. 12 vertebrae fractured. He survived, barely. More assassination attempts followed. His body was breaking, but he kept traveling, kept writing, kept building networks of resistance. Then in December 1960, doctors diagnosed leukemia, months to live. Fanon's response? Race death itself, by dictating the most dangerous book ever written about colonialism. March through May 1961, Frantz Fanon lay in a Tunis hospital bed, dying, while his wife Josie sat beside him with pen and paper. For 3 months, through waves of pain, he dictated The Wretched of the Earth. Josie wrote frantically, capturing every word before the disease could silence him forever. The book opened with a declaration that made governments ban it immediately. Decolonization is always a violent phenomenon. Fanon explained that colonialism was born through force and maintained through force. Therefore, only force could destroy it. The colonizer spoke only one language: force. His most controversial argument came next. Violence had therapeutic value for the colonized. Fighting back didn't just win political freedom, it restored psychological humanity. Violence is a cleansing force that frees the native from his inferiority complex and restores his self-respect. The oppressed needed to fight not for revenge, but for rebirth. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote a preface that turned controversial into explosive. He told white European readers, to shoot down a European is to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, to destroy an oppressor and the man he oppresses at the same time. France banned the book the day it published. They smuggled it anyway, in hollowed books, in suitcases with false bottoms, passed hand to hand across Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, and into American ghettos where the Black Panther Party would make it required reading. Frantz Fanon's leukemia accelerated. He flew to Rome for one final meeting with Sartre, then accepted a CIA offer for treatment in the United States. He traveled under the name Ibrahim Omar Fanon. What happened next remains disputed. By the time Fanon received proper treatment at a Maryland hospital, it was too late. Double pneumonia set in. Some historians argue bureaucratic delays killed him. Others suggest the CIA calculated that a dead Fanon posed less threat than a living revolutionary icon who might survive to inspire more uprisings. December 6, 1961, Frantz Fanon died at 36, 7 months before Algeria won independence. He never walked free streets in a liberated Algiers, but his words were already spreading like a virus through every colonized nation on Earth. The Black Panther Party made The Wretched of the Earth required reading for all members. Bobby Seale handed Huey Newton a copy at one of their first meetings. Frantz Fanon's analysis of police as occupying forces became the intellectual foundation of their 10-point program. When Panthers organized armed patrols monitoring police in Oakland, they were applying Fanon's theory that colonized people must meet violence with organized counter-violence. In South Africa, Steve Biko used Fanon's psychology of liberation to create the Black consciousness movement. Biko taught that before you fight apartheid in the streets, you must kill it in your mind. Pure Fanon. Palestinian resistance movements treated his analysis of settler colonialism as a strategic manual. From Bolivia to Iran to Sri Lanka, liberation fighters discovered that Fanon had diagnosed their reality decades before they lived it. France still struggles with Fanon because he forces them to confront the torture, the massacres, the psychological warfare they disguised as civilization. American institutions fear him because his colonial analysis maps directly onto police brutality and systemic racism. When Ferguson erupted in 2014, protesters carried signs quoting a man who died in 1961. Critics argue universities sanitize Fanon, teach him as historical curiosity instead of living critique, strip away the call to arms that made him dangerous. But read him in prisons, at protests, in occupied territories, and his words still explode. The conditions he described haven't vanished. They've just rebranded. Frantz Fanon never commanded troops or held office. He weaponized consciousness instead. Empires killed him at 36, but killing the man didn't kill the ideas. Every banned book spawned 1,000 smuggled copies. Every attempt to erase him carved his words deeper into history. His family paid the price. Josie Fanon carried his legacy through Algeria's messy independence, battled depression and alcoholism for 28 years, then died by self-destruction in 1989. But their children keep his foundation alive. Daughter Mireille runs the Frantz Fanon Foundation. Son Olivier leads the Frantz Fanon National Association. Fanon taught one lesson that still terrifies power. You don't need permission to be human. You don't need approval to be free. You have every right to take back what was stolen. And if they won't surrender it peacefully, take it by force. The most dangerous black philosopher who ever lived. Dangerous because he loved oppressed people enough to tell them the truth. That truth still detonates in minds worldwide, teaching that liberation begins when you stop asking and start taking. If this story opened your eyes to the intellectual they tried to erase, subscribe to Black Stories Untold. Like this video, share it, and comment which dangerous truth teller we should cover next. Because they can kill the revolutionary, but they can't kill the revolution.
March 9, 1892. 2:00 in the morning, Shelby County Jail, Memphis, Tennessee. 75 white men storm through the doors with guns drawn and torches blazing. The sheriff is nowhere to be found. Convenient. The deputies scattered like roaches when the light hits. Also convenient. These armed men march straight to 3 cells, grab 3 black men by their throats, and drag them screaming into the darkness. Thomas Moss, Calvin McDowell, Will Stewart, respectable business owners, Sunday school teachers, family men. They're thrown onto a wagon like slaughtered livestock and driven 1 mile outside the city limits to the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad Yard. And there, under a pile of brush, where you'd dump trash, they're executed. Thomas Moss, 32 years old, father of 2, looks his murderers in the eye and speaks his final words. Tell my people to go west. There is no justice for them here. Calvin McDowell takes a shotgun blast to the chest at point-blank range. Will Stewart dies fighting with a bullet through his neck. Their bodies are left in the dirt, like they were nothing. Like their lives meant nothing. Like the businesses they built meant nothing. Like their families meant nothing. Memphis newspapers praise the killings the next morning. Call it necessary to maintain public order. Not one arrest is made. Not one investigation is opened. Not one white man faces consequences. Business as usual in America 1892, but one woman refused to stay silent. Her name was Ida Bell Wells. Thomas Moss was her best friend, her business partner, her brother in every way that mattered, and she owned a newspaper. The Memphis Free Speech in headlights. She had a printing press, a mind sharper than any knife and rage that could melt steel. What she wrote in the weeks after that murder would get her exiled from Memphis forever. Her newspaper office destroyed, her printing press burned, her life threatened by mobs who swore they'd lynch her if she ever came back. They thought destroying her newspaper would silence her. They were wrong, dead wrong. What Ida B. Wells did next would terrify the FBI, shake the foundations of white supremacy, and pioneer investigative journalism techniques that are still used today, over 130 years later. She didn't carry a gun. She carried facts. She didn't lead armies. She led truth campaigns, and her weapon of choice was words. She lynched her enemies with words, and they feared her more than any army. This is not a story about a victim. This is a story about a warrior who weaponized truth. By the end of this video, you will know the real reason thousands of black men were lynched in America, and I promise you it was not about protecting white women. That's the lie they sold you. You will know how one black woman with a pen became one of the most dangerous people in America, according to the federal government. You will know the investigative journalism method she invented that exposed a genocide. You will know why this matters right now today in 2025. Why the wealth gap exists. Why mass incarceration exists. Why police brutality continues. You will see the pattern they tried to hide for over a century. And you will never look at American history the same way again. This is not ancient history. Your great-grandparents lived this. Your grandparents survived this. You carry this legacy in your blood. This is your stolen history. And today, we're taking it back. Let me tell you who Ida B. Wells really was, because they damn sure didn't teach you in school. Born July 16, 1862 in Holly Springs, Mississippi, born into slavery 6 months before the Emancipation Proclamation. Her parents were James Wells, a skilled carpenter, and Elizabeth Warrenton, a cook. The moment freedom came, her father helped found Shaw University, which is now Rust College. He understood that education was the key to freedom. Young Ida attended that school soaking up knowledge like a sponge. She was brilliant, sharp as a tack, fearless even as a child. But in 1878, when Ida was just 16 years old, yellow fever swept through Holly Springs like the angel of death. It took her mother. It took her father. It took her infant brother. In one devastating blow, she lost almost everything. 16 years old, orphaned, with 5 younger siblings depending on her. What would you do? Most people would crumble, not Ida. She lied about her age, put her hair up to look older, and got a teaching job paying $25 a month. $25 to feed 6 mouths, to keep a roof over their heads, to keep her family together. And she did it. She taught during the week and took care of her siblings at night. No complaints, no excuses, just survival and determination. In the 1880s, she moved to Memphis, Tennessee, to teach and attend Fisk University. She wanted more education, more knowledge, more power. And it was in Memphis in 1884 that Ida B. Wells had her first taste of fighting the system. She bought a first-class ticket on the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad, sat down in the ladies' car where her ticket said she belonged, and a conductor told her to move to the smoking car with the other black passengers. She refused. He grabbed her arm. She bit his hand. It took 3 men to physically drag her off that train. But Ida didn't just get angry. She got smart. She sued the railroad company. And in the lower court, she won. A black woman in 1884 Tennessee sued a railroad and won. Let that sink in. But the Tennessee Supreme Court overturned the decision. Of course they did, the system protecting itself. But something crystallized in Ida's mind during that court battle. She realized the courts were rigged, the laws were rigged. The whole system was designed to keep black people powerless. But there was one thing they couldn't completely control: the press, words, truth printed on paper and distributed to the masses. She started writing about her case under the pen name Iola. People loved her writing. Sharp, fearless, uncompromising. Within a few years, she became co-owner of the Memphis Free Speech and Headlight newspaper, a black woman owning a newspaper in the Jim Crow South. Think about the courage that took. Think about the target that put on her back. She used that newspaper to tell the truth. Not the sanitized version. Not the version that made white people comfortable. The truth. She wrote about inequality in schools. She exposed corrupt black leaders who sold out their own people. She criticized black ministers who preached submission instead of resistance. She made enemies on all sides. But she didn't care. Truth was her religion. and she was a devoted believer. Then came March 1892, the month that changed everything, the month that would define her life's mission, the month Thomas Moss was murdered. Thomas Moss wasn't just Ida's friend. He was proof that black excellence could thrive even in the suffocating grip of white supremacy. He was 32 years old, married, father of 2 beautiful children, a respected member of the community, taught Sunday school at the church, a letter carrier for the postal service, and along with his friends Calvin McDowell and Will Stewart, he co-owned the People's Grocery Store in a neighborhood called The Curve on the outskirts of Memphis. The People's Grocery was thriving, clean, well-stocked, fair prices, excellent customer service. Black folks loved shopping there, and that was the problem. Directly across the street was a white-owned grocery store run by William Barrett. For years, Barrett had a monopoly on that neighborhood. Black customers had no choice but to shop at his store and pay whatever prices he demanded. But when the People's Grocery opened, customers had options, and they chose the black-owned business. Barrett's profits dropped. His ego couldn't handle it. A black business out-competing him, unacceptable, intolerable, unforgivable. So Barrett did what racist white men always did when they couldn't win fairly. He cheated. He lied. He incited violence. Barrett started spreading rumors, said the black grocers were criminals, said they were dangerous, said they were planning to attack white people. All lies, complete fabrications. But white Memphis believed him because they wanted to believe him. The lie was more comfortable than the truth. The truth was that 3 black men were simply better businessmen than Barrett. And in white supremacist America, that could get you killed. On March 5th, 1892, Barrett made his move. He sent a group of armed white men to raid the People's Grocery. But Thomas Moss and his partners weren't fools. They knew the threats were real. They knew their success had made them targets. So they were ready. When the white mob showed up after dark, the black grocers thought it was a robbery. They defended their property. Shots were fired. Several white men were wounded. And suddenly the entire white power structure of Memphis had the excuse they needed. Over 100 black men were arrested. Not just the grocers. Anyone associated with them. Anyone who had been in the store. Anyone who supported them. The message was clear. This is what happens when you fight back. This is what happens when you dare to defend yourselves. This is what happens when you compete with white businesses. Thomas Moss, Calvin McDowell, and Will Stewart were charged with maintaining a public nuisance. Let me translate that for you. Their crime was being successful while black. They sat in the Shelby County Jail for 4 days, waiting for their day in court, believing foolishly that the legal system would give them justice, believing that their reputations would protect them, believing that being Sunday school teachers and family men and respected citizens would matter. It didn't, because on March 9th at 2 in the morning, 75 white men proved that none of it mattered. The sheriff disappeared. The deputies vanished. The jail was left wide open, and 3 innocent men were dragged to their deaths. When Ida heard the news, something inside her shattered, and something else was born. A righteous fury that would fuel her for the next 40 years. She had lost her best friend. She had watched the legal system fail completely. She had seen with crystal clarity that there was no justice for black people in Memphis, or anywhere else in the South. The courts wouldn't protect them. The police wouldn't protect them. The government wouldn't protect them. So what was left? The truth. The truth told loudly and clearly and without apology. Ida wrote in the Free Speech newspaper words that still burn over 130 years later. She wrote that Thomas Moss was a finer and cleaner man than any who walked the streets of Memphis. She wrote that he was murdered with no more consideration than if he had been a dog. She told black people to leave Memphis, to go west where they might find justice, and thousands did. They left Memphis in droves. The white business owners panicked as their cheap labor and customers disappeared. But Ida wasn't done. Not even close. For weeks she investigated. She talked to witnesses. She read court records. She examined newspaper accounts from across the South. And a pattern emerged. A pattern so clear, so undeniable, so horrifying, that she knew she had to expose it. The lie that justified lynching was that black men were raping white women. This was the story told over and over, in newspapers, in political speeches, in the sermons of racist preachers. The savage black beast who couldn't control his animal urges and had to be put down for the safety of innocent white womanhood. It was propaganda, it was psychological warfare, and it was brutally effective because it gave white mobs moral cover to commit murder. But Ida looked at the actual cases, the real stories behind the lynchings, and she discovered something that would make her a marked woman. In most cases, there was no rape. In many cases, there was no crime at all. In some cases, the relationships between black men and white women were consensual. White women sometimes chose black men as partners, and when those relationships were discovered, the white woman would cry rape to protect herself from social ostracism, and the black man would die, lynched, burned, mutilated, for the crime of being desired. On May 21, 1892, Ida B. Wells published an editorial that detonated like a bomb in the heart of white Memphis. She wrote that nobody in the South believes the old threadbare lie that Negro men assault white women. She exposed the economic motives behind lynching. She pointed out that successful black businesses were destroyed and their owners murdered. She dared to suggest that some white women willingly engaged in relationships with black men. And for writing those words, for telling that truth, white Memphis wanted her dead. A white mob gathered. They marched to the Free Speech newspaper office. They destroyed everything, smashed the furniture, broke the windows, burned the printing press, and they published their own message in the white newspapers. They wrote that the black scoundrel who wrote those words should be lynched. They wrote that if Ida B. Wells ever returned to Memphis, she would be killed. They meant it. Every word. Ida was in New York when it happened. She had traveled there on business. If she had been in Memphis that day, they would have murdered her. No question, no doubt. She would have been lynched just like Thomas Moss. But she was alive. She was in New York, and she had a choice to make. She could stay silent, disappear, change her name, live quietly somewhere far away, or she could fight. Ida B. Wells chose war. She thought to herself, they destroyed my paper. They made me an exile. They threatened my life for hinting at the truth. Now I owe it to myself and my race to tell the whole truth. And that is exactly what she did. She joined the staff of the New York Age newspaper, and she began the most important work of her life, a systematic, methodical, groundbreaking investigation into lynching across the entire South. She became one of America's first investigative journalists. She traveled throughout the South in disguise. Imagine that, a black woman with a price on her head, traveling through the most dangerous territories in America, asking questions, interviewing witnesses, gathering evidence. She talked to families of lynching victims. She examined court records. She read through thousands of newspaper articles. She collected statistics. She documented names, dates, locations, and alleged crimes. She built case files like a prosecutor preparing for trial, and what she discovered was a genocide, a systematic campaign of terror designed to destroy black economic progress, black political power, and black self-determination. From 1889 to 1894, she documented 728 lynchings of black Americans. 728 human beings murdered by mobs. And when she looked at the reasons given for these murders, the lie fell apart completely. Only 46 were accused of rape. 58 were accused of murder. 6 were lynched for race prejudice. 4 had no cause given. 2 were lynched for insulting women. 2 were children. A boy and a girl. Children. What crime could children possibly commit to justify their murder? None. The answer is none. Lynching was never about justice. It was about terror. Ida compiled all of this evidence into publications that changed history. On October 5, 1892, just months after being exiled from Memphis, she delivered a speech at Lyric Hall in New York City. The audience was packed with prominent African American women who understood the stakes. 3 weeks later, on October 26th, she published that speech as a pamphlet titled Southern Horrors Lynch Law in all its phases. She exposed every lie. She named names. She provided evidence. She demolished the myth of the black rapist. She showed that lynching was about economics and power, not protection. And she dedicated the pamphlet to the Afro-American women of New York and Brooklyn who funded its publication. Black women supporting a black woman telling the truth. Beautiful. But she wasn't finished. In 1895, she published The Red Record, the most comprehensive documentation of lynching ever produced up to that time. It was a masterpiece of investigative journalism, data-driven, meticulously sourced, undeniable. She listed every lynching she could verify from 1889 to 1894. She included the victims' names when known. She listed the alleged crimes. She exposed the pattern. She created statistical analysis that proved beyond any doubt that rape was not the primary motive for lynching. She turned journalism into a weapon and white supremacy into a target. The Red Record went beyond just numbers. Ida included narratives, stories of specific victims. She humanized the statistics. She made readers see the faces behind the data. She described how mobs would advertise lynchings in advance, like they were community events. How families would bring their children to watch. How photographers would take pictures and sell them as postcards. Smiling white crowds posing next to burned and mutilated black bodies. Souvenirs of murder. She showed those photographs to the world, and the world was horrified. In 1893 and 1894, Ida took her evidence international. She traveled to Great Britain and delivered lectures across the country. She showed British audiences the truth about American democracy. She displayed the lynching postcards. She shared the testimonies. She exposed the hypocrisy of a nation that claimed to be the beacon of freedom while tolerating genocide within its borders. The British public was outraged. The London Anti-Lynching Committee was formed in 1894. International pressure mounted on the American government. White America could no longer hide its sins. Ida had dragged them into the light, and the federal government noticed. By the 1910s, the FBI had opened a file on Ida B. Wells. They called her one of the most dangerous Negro agitators in the country. Let that sink in. The Federal Bureau of Investigation tasked with protecting America from threats considered a black woman with a pen and a notebook to be dangerous. Why? Because truth is dangerous to tyranny. Because evidence destroys lies. Because Ida B. Wells proved that one person armed with facts could challenge an entire system of oppression. She didn't need weapons. She had something more powerful, the truth. And they couldn't kill it. They couldn't burn it. They couldn't silence it. No matter how hard they tried, Ida eventually settled in Chicago. She married Ferdinand Barnett, a lawyer and newspaper editor. She had 4 children. She continued her activism for the rest of her life. She fought for women's suffrage. She organized black women politically. She investigated more lynchings. She challenged Booker T. Washington's accommodationist approach to racism. She demanded full equality, not gradual progress. She never compromised, never backed down, never sold out. And when she died on March 25, 1931, at the age of 68, she died still fighting, still speaking truth, still demanding justice. But here's what they don't tell you. Here's what they erased from the history books. Memphis wasn't an isolated incident. Thomas Moss wasn't a unique case. The pattern Ida exposed wasn't limited to a few bad actors in a few southern towns. It was systematic. It was national. It was policy. Let me show you the receipts. Wilmington, North Carolina, November 10th, 1898. This is the only successful coup d'etat in United States history. Let me repeat that. The only time a legitimately elected government was violently overthrown on American soil. And they don't teach it in schools. Wilmington had a black majority population. Black men held political offices. There was a thriving black middle class. Black-owned businesses lined the streets. The Daily Record, a black newspaper, published articles challenging white supremacy, and white people could not tolerate it. A group of white supremacists, led by Alfred Moore Waddell, organized a violent overthrow of the city government. They called themselves the Red Shirts. They were terrorists. On November 10th, armed white militias stormed through Wilmington. They burned the Daily Record newspaper office to the ground. They murdered between 60 and 300 black citizens. The exact number is still unknown because they hid the bodies so well. They forced over 2,000 black residents to flee the city permanently. They installed an all-white government at gunpoint. They stole an entire city from its black majority population. And for over 100 years, history books called it the Wilmington Race Riot. A riot. Like it was some spontaneous outbreak of violence. It was a planned, organized, executed coup. It was terrorism. It was theft. And not one person was ever prosecuted. Atlanta, Georgia, September 22nd through 24, 1906, the Atlanta Race Massacre. White newspapers had been running false stories for weeks about black men assaulting white women, building up fear, creating panic, manufacturing consent for violence. And on September 22nd, white mobs rampaged through Atlanta for 3 straight days. They murdered between 25 and 40 black people. They injured hundreds more. They destroyed black businesses throughout the city. Auburn Avenue, known as the Black Wall Street of the South, was attacked and looted. Homes were burned. Families were terrorized. And the police didn't stop it. The police participated. The National Guard was finally called in, but they protected white neighborhoods while black neighborhoods burned. And after it was all over, not one white person was prosecuted for murder. Not one. Elaine, Arkansas. September 30th through October 7th, 1919. Black sharecroppers in Phillips County had organized a union. They wanted fair payment for their cotton. They wanted to be paid what they were owed instead of being cheated by white plantation owners. Organizing for fair wages. That was their crime. On September 30th, white men attacked a union meeting at a church. The sharecroppers defended themselves. They fought back. And that's when white supremacy showed its true face. White mobs from across the region descended on Elaine. Federal troops were deployed. But instead of protecting the black community, they sided with the white mobs. Over the next week, between 100 and 240 black people were massacred. The exact number is unknown. There were 0 white casualties from the initial conflict, which tells you everything about who was really the aggressor. But then, 285 black people were arrested for inciting a riot. 12 were sentenced to death. The NAACP had to fight for years to get those convictions overturned. The pattern is clear. Black people organize economically white supremacy responds with mass murder. Rosewood, Florida, January 1st through 7, 1923. Rosewood was a prosperous black town. Black families owned their homes. They owned businesses. They had a church, a school, a Masonic lodge. They were thriving. On January 1st, a white woman named Fannie Taylor in the nearby town of Sumner claimed a black man had attacked her. It was a lie. She later admitted it was a lie. She had a white lover, and when her husband came home unexpectedly, she made up a story to cover her affair. But that lie was enough. White mobs from surrounding areas invaded Rosewood. They burned every single black-owned building, the church, the school, every home, every business, everything. They murdered at least 6 to 8 black residents, though the real number is likely much higher. The entire black population fled into the swamps and never returned. The town of Rosewood was literally erased from the map. For 70 years, nobody talked about it. It was buried, hidden, erased. It wasn't until 1994 that the state of Florida officially acknowledged the massacre and provided compensation to survivors. But the town was never rebuilt. The wealth was never restored. The land was never returned. Do you see the pattern now? Memphis 1892, Wilmington 1898, Atlanta 1906, Elaine 1919, Rosewood 1923. And these are just a few examples. Ida B. Wells documented thousands of cases. From 1889 to 1921, there were over 3,400 documented lynchings across 33 states. 3,400 documented cases. The real number is probably over 10,000 when you count the ones that were never reported, never investigated, never recorded. Every time black people built wealth, it was destroyed. Every time black people gained political power, it was stolen. Every time black people organized for justice, they were massacred. This was not random violence. This was not a series of unfortunate incidents. This was systematic. This was intentional. This was policy. This was white supremacy's business model. Destroy black progress by any means necessary. And here's the question you need to ask. How did they hide it? How did they erase 10,000 murders from history? How did they make entire towns disappear from memory? How did they convince you that your ancestors were helpless victims, instead of warriors who built empires under terrorism? Let me show you the machinery of erasure. Let me show you how white supremacy buries truth. Physical destruction was the first tool. They burned everything. Property records in Tulsa, Rosewood, and Wilmington went up in flames. Newspaper archives that documented black success were destroyed. Buildings and landmarks were demolished so thoroughly that future generations would have no physical evidence that thriving black communities ever existed. In Memphis, the white grocer William Barrett got the city's help in destroying the people's grocery. Ida wrote about it directly. She said that with the aid of city and county authorities and daily papers, that white grocer had indeed put an end to his rival Negro grocer. The government wasn't neutral. The government was complicit. In Wilmington, they burned the Daily Record newspaper office, the voice of black political power. In Rosewood, every structure was systematically destroyed. No buildings means no evidence, means no memory. But it wasn't just about burning buildings. They seized property without compensation. Survivors were forbidden to return to their homes and land. In Wilmington, 2,100 black residents were permanently exiled from the city they built. In Rosewood, the entire population fled into the swamps and never came back. Their land was stolen, their wealth was confiscated, and the legal system provided cover for all of it. Judges ruled against black property claims. Insurance companies refused to pay out claims for destroyed property. The wealth that black families had built over generations was transferred directly into white hands. This is how they built white wealth. On black corpses and stolen land, legal suppression was the second tool. And this one cuts deep because we're taught to believe in the legal system. We're taught that laws protect everyone equally. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. There was never a federal anti-lynching law passed in the United States. Never. Not one. The Dyer anti-lynching bill was introduced in Congress in 1922. Ida B. Wells and the NAACP submitted her map showing 3,400 documented lynchings across 33 states from 1889 to 1921. They had the evidence, they had the receipts, they had the names and the dates and the locations, and Congress said no. The bill failed. Both Northern and Southern congressmen voted against it. The map even showed which congressmen voted no, creating a permanent record of who chose to protect lynchers over victims. The federal government had the power to stop the genocide. They chose not to. At the local level, authorities didn't just fail to protect black people. They participated in the violence. When Thomas Moss, Calvin McDowell, and Will Stewart were lynched, the sheriff was conveniently absent. The deputies scattered. The jail was left wide open. That wasn't incompetence. That was collaboration. In Atlanta, police officers joined the white mobs attacking black neighborhoods. In Elaine, Arkansas, federal troops sided with the white militias instead of protecting black sharecroppers. And here's the most twisted part. When black people defended themselves, when they fought back against terrorism, they were arrested. In Elaine, 285 black people were arrested after the massacre. 12 were sentenced to death for inciting a riot. Let me say that again. The victims were prosecuted. The murderers were protected. That's what law and order meant in Jim Crow America. Protecting white supremacy at all costs. After the massacres, cities weaponized zoning laws and building codes to prevent black communities from rebuilding. Fire codes were changed to make reconstruction prohibitively expensive or outright illegal. Banks refused to provide loans to black survivors. Insurance companies denied every claim. It was economic strangulation disguised as policy. Ida documented how cities and counties actively helped destroy black businesses. The government wasn't a neutral referee. It was an active participant in theft. Educational erasure was the third tool, and this one affects you directly because it shaped what you were taught in school. The Tulsa Race Massacre was removed from Oklahoma textbooks for 75 years. 3 entire generations of Oklahomans grew up never knowing that white mobs had destroyed 35 city blocks of Black Wall Street in 1921. Rosewood wasn't taught in Florida schools until the 1990s, 70 years after the massacre. The Wilmington coup was called a race riot in history books for over a century, framing a planned terrorist overthrow as spontaneous violence. The Memphis People's Grocery lynching that catalyzed Ida B. Wells into action is absent from most American history curricula. The Elaine Massacre was erased from Arkansas textbooks. Your grandparents weren't taught this history. Your parents weren't taught this history. You weren't taught this history. And that was intentional. Because truth is dangerous to power. If you knew that your great-grandfather owned a thriving business that was burned down by a white mob, you'd understand why your family never accumulated generational wealth. If you knew that your great-grandmother's land was stolen at gunpoint, you'd understand why your family rents instead of owns. If you knew that every time black people organized economically, they were massacred, you'd understand that the wealth gap isn't about work ethic or personal responsibility. It's about systematic theft protected by law. But erasing the events wasn't enough. They had to change the narrative around what happened. Massacres were called riots. The word riot implies that both sides were equally violent, that chaos erupted spontaneously. But these were planned attacks. Coups were called redemption, as if white supremacists were saving communities from black political power. Terrorism was called restoring order, suggesting that black success was inherently disorderly and needed to be corrected with violence. Victims were blamed for their own murders. White newspapers wrote that black people had incited the violence by being too successful, too ambitious, too uppity. Ida B. Wells exposed these lies in real time. She wrote that what white newspapers called riots were actually massacres. What they called unfortunate incidents were actually planned operations. What they called the past was actually ongoing policy. She understood that language is a weapon of erasure. Control the words, and you control the memory. Control the memory, and you control the future. Media manipulation was the fourth tool. White newspapers didn't just report on lynchings. They justified them. They printed false rape accusations as established fact. The Memphis papers praised the murder of Thomas Moss, calling it necessary to maintain public order. Atlanta newspapers fabricated a black crime wave in 1906 to manufacture consent for the massacre that followed. Some newspapers even advertised lynchings in advance, listing the time and location, like they were announcing a community picnic. White families brought their children to watch black people being tortured and murdered. Photographers sold postcards of lynchings as souvenirs. Smiling white crowds posing next to burned and mutilated black bodies. The press was complicit in genocide. Ida B. Wells started the Memphis Free Speech newspaper specifically to counter this propaganda. She knew that black people needed their own media to tell their own stories. And that's exactly why white mobs destroyed her printing press in 1892. They couldn't allow a black woman to control the narrative. They couldn't allow truth to compete with their lies. Every lynching was justified by claiming black criminality. The rape accusation was the most common excuse, the most powerful propaganda tool they had. It played on white fears and white supremacist fantasies about black male sexuality. It gave moral cover to murder. But Ida proved with data that it was a lie. Of the 728 lynchings she documented from 1889 to 1894, only 46 involved accusations of rape. Many cases listed no cause given or race prejudice as the reason. 2 of the victims were children, a boy and a girl. What crime could children possibly commit to deserve lynching? None. The truth is that lynching was about terror and control. It was about destroying black economic competition. It was about crushing black political power. It was about maintaining white supremacy through fear. That's why the FBI called Ida B. Wells one of the most dangerous Negro agitators in the country. Not because she advocated violence. She never did. But because she had receipts. She had evidence. She had statistics. She had names and dates and locations. She had testimony from witnesses. She had documentation that couldn't be easily dismissed. Truth is the most dangerous weapon against tyranny. And Ida B. Wells was armed to the teeth with truth. So now you understand the machinery. 4 pillars holding up white supremacy, physical destruction of evidence, legal protection for murderers and prosecution of victims, educational erasure across generations, media manipulation and propaganda. These 4 pillars work together to hide a genocide, to erase your history, to steal your inheritance, to make you forget that your ancestors were builders and warriors and millionaires. But here's what they couldn't erase. Here's what survived despite everything. The truth. And one black woman with a pen who refused to let them bury it. Ida B. Wells started dismantling those pillars in 1892, and we're still dismantling them today. That's why they exiled her from Memphis. That's why they threatened her life. That's why the FBI opened a file on her. Because truth destroys lies. and she had all the receipts. Now let me show you why this matters right now, today, in 2025. Because this isn't ancient history. This isn't something that happened long ago to people you'll never know. This is your story. This affects your life right now. Let me connect the dots they don't want you to see. The wealth gap. You've heard the statistics. In 2024, the median white household has $188,000 in wealth. The median black household has $24,000. That's an 8-to-1 ratio. Black families have 12 cents for every dollar white families have. And they tell you it's because black people don't work hard enough. They tell you it's because of poor financial decisions. They tell you it's because of cultural problems. They tell you to stop blaming slavery because that was generations ago. But let me show you the math they don't want you to see. Thomas Moss owned a successful business in 1892. The People's Grocery was thriving, competing directly with white businesses, and winning. If Thomas Moss hadn't been lynched, that business would have continued to grow. The profits would have been passed down to his children. His children would have invested that wealth and passed it to their children. That's how generational wealth works. Compound growth over time. 132 years of compound growth from 1892 to 2024. That family should be wealthy today, possibly millionaires, but instead Thomas Moss was murdered, his business was destroyed, his wealth was stolen, and his descendants started from zero. Actually less than zero, because they lost not just the business, but also the trauma of knowing their ancestor was lynched for the crime of success. Now multiply that by 10,000 lynchings. Multiply it by every black-owned business destroyed in Tulsa, Rosewood, Wilmington, Atlanta, Elaine, and hundreds of other places. Multiply it by every acre of land stolen. Multiply it by every inheritance erased. The wealth gap isn't about work ethic. It's about theft. Systematic legal government-protected theft. Your great-grandfather's store in Memphis was burned. Your great-grandmother's home in Rosewood was stolen. Your family's land in Arkansas was seized. Your inheritance was robbed. And they have the nerve to tell you to work harder. They say slavery was long ago, and you should get over it. But Rosewood was 1923, 101 years ago. That's your grandparents' lifetime. Tulsa was 1921, 103 years ago. People who survived those massacres lived into the 2000s. Some of their children are still alive today. Redlining, the systematic denial of mortgages and loans to black families, didn't end until 1968. That's 56 years ago. That's your parents' lifetime. Your father couldn't get a mortgage to buy a house in a white neighborhood because banks literally had maps marking black neighborhoods as hazardous for investment. The explosion of mass incarceration started in the 1980s and continues today. That's your lifetime. Police killing unarmed black people happened yesterday and will probably happen again tomorrow. This isn't ancient history. The theft is ongoing. The terror is current. The system is still functioning exactly as designed. Let's talk about reparations. That word makes some people uncomfortable, but let's be clear about what it means. Reparations aren't charity. Reparations aren't a handout. Reparations are payment for theft. Conservative estimates put the amount stolen from black Americans at $14 trillion minimum. That includes stolen labor during slavery, stolen land during Reconstruction, stolen businesses during the lynching era, stolen wealth during redlining, and stolen time during mass incarceration. $14 trillion. That's your inheritance. That's what's owed. Ida B. Wells documented the theft. She provided the evidence. Her red record map was submitted to Congress in 1922, showing 3,400 documented lynchings. They had proof 102 years ago. They had the receipts. They had the names. They had the dates. They had the locations. They had the photographs. And Congress voted no on the anti-lynching bill. Northern congressmen and Southern congressmen both refused. But the debt doesn't disappear because payment is delayed. Justice delayed is not justice denied. It's justice owed. We are owed, not as a favor, not as charity, as payment for documented, proven, undeniable theft. Now let me show you how the same patterns continue today with different names. Gentrification is modern land theft. Your neighborhood in Atlanta or Chicago or Oakland that's been black for generations is suddenly discovered by developers. Property taxes skyrocket. You can't afford to stay in the home your family has owned for decades. You're forced out. White people move in. Property values increase. They profit. You lose. This is Wilmington, 1898 in slow motion. This is Rosewood, 1923 with paperwork instead of torches. The result is identical. Black people displaced. White people profit. The method is different, but the pattern is the same. Ida B. Wells would recognize it immediately. Mass incarceration is modern slavery. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery except as punishment for crime. So what did they do? They criminalized blackness. The war on drugs targeted black communities despite equal or higher drug use rates among white people. Mandatory minimum sentences and 3 strikes laws were designed to lock up black men for decades. 1 in 3 black men will be imprisoned at some point in their lifetime. Once in prison, they work for pennies an hour. Modern slavery. Families are destroyed. Wealth becomes impossible to build. It's exactly what the Elaine Massacre achieved in 1919, destroying black economic organizing. What Ida exposed was a system designed to control black bodies. The system still exists. They just renamed it criminal justice. Police brutality is modern lynching. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, Sandra Bland. The list is endless, and it grows every year. Police kill unarmed black people and face no consequences, no accountability, no justice. Just like 1892, Thomas Moss was murdered by a mob and no arrests were made. Black people today are murdered by police and no convictions follow. 132 years apart. Same pattern. Different uniforms. Ida wrote after Thomas Moss was killed that every white man in Memphis who